All right, so I hope you guys have enjoyed this. I do want to open it up for some questions. We've got about 10 minutes here, and I see some coming in, probably endless questions about the fact that my internet went out. Again, I apologize for that, but let's get through some of these questions. If you've got a burning question relative to or related to the topics that we covered today, send them in and let's go through some of them. Okay, here's a good one. Vanessa says, you say 20% down, but on the investment properties that I'm seeing, all lenders are asking for 25% down. Do you agree with this, or am I talking to the wrong lenders? I don't know which lenders you're talking to or the full story there, so I can't speak to that, but 20% is the minimum down payment that you can put down on an investment loan without triggering PMI. So there's kind of three options. 15% down is an option sometimes, but it requires that you pay PMI, private mortgage insurance. 20% down is the maximum leverage that you can use without having to pay PMI. And then putting 25% down can sometimes buy you a little bit better interest rate. Obviously, it's also going to have an impact on the principal and interest payments because you're going to be financing less. So no, 25% is not required. 25% is required when you're buying multifamily. So once you start looking at duplexes, triplexes, and quadplexes, if you're still looking at that conventional loan, that's where the requirement for 25% comes in. Okay. So there's a good question here about how to calculate the return on investment for a single family home. And I'm not going to walk you through a full equation on how to do this because I think it would require a lot more time. But and I think to this point, this is a good example. I have an investor call me and say, I'm looking for a 10% ROI. And I always ask them to clarify what they mean by that. Because again, I'm thinking about all 5 of these revenue streams. And what I have found is that most people, when they say, I want a 10% ROI, they're only talking about the cash flow. They want 10% cash on cash return in their pocket, every month. So you always have to clarify when someone is giving you a return, like a return of this, you need to understand, well, what does that include? Is that just looking at cash flow? Are you just looking at appreciation? Or are you looking at everything? There's some great tools to kind of help you calculate total return. So taking in the tax, taking in the appreciation, taking in the hedge against inflation, the cash flow, and I will say that the returns that you see are extreme. I mean, usually 20, sometimes 35% returns. And obviously the longer that you hold that property, the return can be exponential. So that's a difficult one to answer directly. But again, you got to be sure that you're calculating all the different returns, not just that cash on cash return, looking at cash flow. Okay, there's some good questions in here about, what kind of questions should I ask if I'm hiring a CPA? I think that's a great question, and I think that might be a good idea for us to do additional webinar on that, just with some additional questions. But I think you really first and foremost want to gauge their experience with real estate investors. And obviously, if you have a unique employment situation, like my husband being military, we also wanted to find a CPA who not only understood real estate tax strategy, but understood military taxes and some of the exemptions that we get. So I think first and foremost, you just want to know that the CPA that you are working with has experience dealing with real estate and really understands and believes in that strategy. I've talked to some people before who've had CPAs who are pretty opinionated about real estate, and I think if you have goals investing in real estate, it's probably not wise to align yourself with someone who doesn't believe in it. Okay, I like this question. Len wants to know, when you have multiple properties, do you start to pay off the loan from one with the cash flow from the others? And my answer to that is, it depends. Yes, I think that's a great strategy. I actually had a conversation with an investor just yesterday where I asked him, he asked me this question, and I said, it depends on whether you are in a growing phase or whether you're in a consolidation phase. So what I mean by that is, if you're young and you have lots of time on your side, and this is a strategy that you want to implement now, but you're really not wanting to enjoy the benefits of it for another 30 or 40 years, I say don't start paying them off yet. Really enjoy the benefits of leverage, cast your net out as far as you can, and let those 5 principles just max out as long as they can. But if I was in a phase of life where maybe I'm a little bit closer to retirement, it might not make sense to keep everything levered out full tilt. You know, it might make sense to start consolidating a little bit. I'll get into some of this on the webinar next week. I put together a couple different scenarios for you so that you can see the difference of, you know, paid off home over time versus a levered home over time. And so I definitely, Lynn, join me next week when I get into that, because I think you'll really get a lot of that. But if I'm in this consolidation phase, I'm trying to create more efficiency. I want to have more cash flow, but I'm also thinking about my time. And so I don't want as many doors. So maybe I can generate more cash flow. All right, let's use the same amount of cash flow. So let's say my goal is creating $5,000 worth of cash flow. If I want to be levered and use only 20% down, I'm going to have a bunch of properties to hit that $5,000 a month cash flow. But if I am okay not being levered and owning those properties outright, I can hit that $5,000 a month cash flow goal with fewer homes. So it depends on where you are. I think a lot of people talk about the snowballing debt strategy that Dave Ramsey made so popular, applying that to real estate and applying it to your mortgage debt and taking all the cash flow from properties, paying down the loan that has the smallest balance due or the highest interest rate, I guess, depending on your situation. Put all that cash flow back into it, and you absolutely can expedite the pay down. And suddenly those 30-year loans just start collapsing on themselves. And I've heard some really cool podcasts before where people have done the math for many different size portfolios. I think there's a minimum. I think, you know, you probably have to have a minimum of 5 or 10 properties for this to work. But they say once you have this certain amount of doors, no matter how many you have, if you implement this snowball strategy, you can have your entire portfolio paid off in about 15 years. So yeah, you can get into some serious power there. Good question, Lynn. All right, I got time for one more. Let's end on a good one here. All right, lots of questions here about how do I find properties? How do I find property managers? What is the role of the property manager? And to those questions, I would say I really think you're who needs to join the network and get full access to everything. We teach classes on all of this. We regularly host webinars with our property teams where they go into detail on these topics. So definitely join the network and get access to more of those resources. Connect with your investment counselor. Definitely plan to be here next week so we can get into some of these practical steps. All right, well, we are right on the hour. So I really, really do appreciate you guys bearing with me. I apologize again for that connectivity issue. But I hope you got a lot out of this. I want to remind you real quick about next Thursday. So August 20th, same time, same place, put it on your calendar. I'll be back here teaching part 2, where we're going to get a little deeper into these steps and how to actually do this. I'm really looking forward to it. Man, I'm glad I decided to break it up into 2 sections because we spent a full hour just on the fundamentals. Hope you guys really enjoyed that. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you later.